Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2025, and Trump comes out against Tylenol. Were you excited about the autism announcement? Because, wow, nope. Big mess there for Trump, I think. So there's good Trump news and there's bad Trump news. That's part of the bad Trump news. I can't remember what the good Trump news is now. Oh, well. There is a trucker protest in Quebec, and my sound seems a little high today. I'll leave it where it is for now. There's a trucker protest in Quebec. It was supposed to go to Ottawa, I think, but then it got canceled. And I don't know the details around why it got canceled. Kind of a weird situation, but I think could be the laws that are surrounding truck protests in Ottawa. And they found out that they could lose all their trucks, et cetera, et cetera. And so maybe that changed some plans. But I really don't know. So it's interesting, and we'll examine that as well, but briefly only. Gun grab update. Cape Breton, look out. It is going to come for you guys first, and if it fails there, it'll fail everywhere. So it's an interesting situation, and I don't think when you have a public safety minister who doesn't fundamentally believe in the program that he's rolling out, how can you roll it out? It's kind of a betrayal. We are being distracted. Charlie Kirk's story is a good example of being distracted and talking about things that ultimately don't matter in the long run, I guess. I don't think we're going to ever it's like talking about the JFK assassination, round and round and round you go, right? Like you're never going to get a definitive answer. And us talking in circles about all of that is wasting our time and keeping us busy while other things are moving forward, other agendas are moving forward. And I just think that's worth pointing out. Antifa is labeled a terrorist organization in the United States by Donald Trump, and we'll see how that impacts anything at all, if it'll impact anything in Canada, because, well, there's been terrorist organizations declared in Canada even, and they were allowed to continue to fundraise until just recently. So, I mean, is it really going to make any difference? I don't think so, but maybe I'm wrong. And of course, the title of today's show, Ostrich-Gate. We've got some ostrich updates for you, and indeed, we've got to start with the ostrich situation. There are a whole lot of things in play here, setting a bad precedent. If the RCMP can say, your pets are sick, and we got to kill all your pets. That's it. And no, we're not going to test them. No, you can't fight it. There's no way to challenge us. It reminds me of COVID all over again, right? Like you have to do what we say. If you challenge it in court, it's going to get dismissed for one reason or another. You don't get to actually stand up for yourselves or your rights. And well, that's it. Next question, right? And I think that there's a lot of similarities here, so there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're going to look at the ostriches, and GDF and BS says, for anyone asking why people care about the destruction of the ostriches, this sets an insane precedent. They can destroy your animals without even needing to test them, just under the mere suspicion. They are refusing to test these animals, which are healthy, and are simply intending to go ahead with the cull. There is extensive antibody research that will be destroyed or ended. Why? Today it's the ostriches. Next, they could decide that dogs are a public health threat. We have a criminal government, he says. And pretty wild stuff going on there. Robert Kennedy Jr. wrote a letter in July, and I guess nothing happened. The ostriches are still here and still at risk. And so, not great. That's not good. Petrified COVID parents thanks the networks, right? They thank CBC and CTV and Global. He says, I'm glad the media isn't covering the the government's mass ostrich slaughter. The government should be allowed to come onto our land and murder our pets, our livelihood, and even our families whenever they want. Thank you for keeping Canadians in the dark. CBC, CTV, and Global. Yep. So are we being told the truth about any of this? I don't think so. There's a lot of footage, and I'm not going to show a lot of the live stream and stuff. There's a lot of footage coming out yesterday just showing the police showing up, the police taking control of the road with a controlled, there was rumors of controlled access at one point. If you leave, you can't come back, but I don't know if that's actually what happened or if that was just for a short period of time. There were residents blocking the roads. I'll show you that. But I think that there's more going on here than meets the eye. I think that they're going to try and maybe even punish the owners of the farm if the owners of the farm try and impede anything that the RCMP or the people who are actually carrying out the cull are doing. Also, there are reports that the rental agencies that were renting equipment to the RCMP have demanded their stuff back, and there have been times where the rental agencies come out and taken their stuff back, and so that's possibly delaying the RCMP's ability to move forward with what's going on. So I genuinely don't know, but there seems to be a lot of moving parts to this, and nothing's certain, although people are concerned about what's going on, and rightly so. I think that's true. Here's Odessa, and she says, breaking the Canadian RCMP while having a heated exchange with the ostrich farmers prove that they blatantly know this is all a CFIA liberal political theater. Not only are none of them wearing gloves or masks or personal protective equipment, it's obvious that they know the ostriches are not going to get them sick, and there is no worry of harm to anyone in the public as they are going in and out of the quarantine zone after standing right next to the ostriches, then heading back into town. Our country is broken. They know that these ostriches are not a risk, and yet they're going to kill them anyway, which is weird. Kirk says RCMP, no assets spared for slaughter of ostriches, standing against carbon tax protesters, trample protesters against government rights and freedoms, infringing mandates, find the 4,000 fentanyl drug trafficking organizations, investigate corrupt politicians. They get check marks for the first three. They don't get check marks for find 4,000 fentanyl drug trafficking organizations or investigating corrupt politicians. We're just doing our job. So that was the theme of one of the videos. Somebody was walking through saying, oh, you guys are just doing your job, right? Just doing your job. This is the video right here. And so it's 3 minutes of talking to the police officers saying, you guys are just doing your job. Marty says, pause for a moment and think about this show of force by our government. We have thousands of criminal groups in Canada selling drugs, dealing fentanyl, trafficking kids, extorting businesses, threatening home builders, and more. Meanwhile, 4 dozen RCMP officers are descending on a peaceful ostrich farm to enforce an unscientific mandate. Next month, some of these same officers will be kicking down doors, coming to confiscate your previously legally acquired firearms because of the liberal gun ban. Just doing my job. One more reason for Alberta independence. One more reason to kick the RCMP out of Alberta. So yeah, there you go for that. Although this is not Alberta, it's just talking about the RCMP. The farm is in BC, as far as I understand it. Daisy says, I don't know if you guys can hear that. There's an air compressor running in the background. It just turned on. Anyway, sorry. I hope it's not loud. Daisy says CFIA has already moved in and more RCMP are moving in at Universal Ostrich Farm. Representatives of the CFIA have a warrant and are attempting to get farmers out of the ostrich enclosure. And the ostriches are getting worried. I feel like the birds can pick up on your worry. Like if you're worried that the birds are going to get murdered, I don't know that the birds are thinking, holy cow, we're going to get murdered. Like, I don't think that it's a direct kind of like that much. But if you've got anxiety and you're like crying every time you walk up to the ostrich enclosure, and if you listen to the videos, there is a lot of crying, and there's all this activity, and there's all these weird people around, you'd be like, you know what, let's get the hell out of Dodge, man. We've got wings, let's use them, right? Like, and that's a bad idea for an ostrich. And so I feel like the ostriches are indeed running into fences. I'm not meaning to make light of that. I'm just saying, like, they can feel it. They can sense something's weird is going on. Like, there's all these people here. People seem upset. This is not, this is not usual ostrich life, And so all of this is traumatizing the ostriches. It's traumatizing the humans, and it's creating a focal point that is totally artificial. There's no reason to do any of this. It's pretty insane, really. Bradshaw says, look at those police officers. You'd think that there's a manhunt going on in BC. Nope. It's a family ostrich farm where they want these healthy birds killed. I guess there's no real serious crime to attend to. Actually, there was a little boy who was gone missing, and the RCMP were worried about this instead of the missing boy. And I don't know if it was a manhunt necessary for the missing boy, or what you practically do. Do you scramble the police force if there's a missing person? I don't think you do. I don't know. Anyway, you certainly shouldn't be scrambling the police force to an ostrich farm. That's unless something terrible is happening at the ostrich farm, but you shouldn't be scrambling the police force to the ostrich farm to kill the ostriches. Odessa says, update with the planned murder of the ostriches. Supporters of the animals have blocked the entrances as the mafia are on their way to the property. The farm is hoping that their written plea through lawyers to the Supreme Court will go through before the needless slaughter. The federal government is also scrambling the internet. Most influencers trying to do lives cannot get on or are cut off within minutes. So yesterday I had to go out after I did my show, and I had a meeting or something like that. And as I was driving, I just randomly, sometimes I'll check my show because people tell me that it acts weird sometimes when you play it back, and I believe them. And so I wanted to see if anything weird was going to happen. And so I opened YouTube, the YouTube app, and I hit the most recent show, and I published it. I checked that it had published. It's a live broadcast, so people have seen it. People are watching it now, and so watching the live broadcast now. So when I pushed on it, nothing happened. I couldn't join. I was logged into my own account, and I still couldn't watch any of it. I couldn't watch the replay. I couldn't do anything. And somebody confirmed that it worked on their desktop, but I don't know if it worked on their phone. And so I thought, that's really weird. And so I checked on Rumble, and Rumble worked where it didn't work the other day. But Rumble worked. But what happened with Rumble was when I was describing the 3 levels of the games that we play, the 3 levels, every 5 words, it would stop. So I would say 5 words and it would stop and refresh. And I would say 5 more and it would stop and refresh. And it would say 5 more and stop and refresh. And it was maddening. And I couldn't do anything to fix it. And I was like, wow. So censorship. Yeah. And then a bunch of people said, well, I watch on CanadaPoly.com directly and it was fine. So I'm glad. I'm very, very glad that there are places that you can watch that it's not being messed with, but it is messed with. And then even further, people who were doing lives at the ostrich farm were being messed with too. So I don't know if I got caught up in broader censorship or if they just mess with me as a matter of course. Why not both? Probably both. BUAC is talking about the ostriches as well. And Tamara says Canadian government priorities are like organized crime, fentanyl superlabs, human trafficking, illegal immigration. Meh, we're having conversations. But research ostriches loaded with antibodies to disease X pathogens like the bird flu, unleash the RCMP and kill them all. BUAC says, so you're telling me a bunch of RCMP officers armed with guns are going to waltz in and kill 400 ostriches for no good reason, and then we're all expected to just pass these guys all our guns? Get effed. I don't think so, man. That sounds like a bad idea for my continued survival. Right Blend says one supremely disturbing claim in the ostrich farm story is that the farm was never allowed to provide evidence in court and that they were not allowed to retest the birds to prove immunity, non-infection under threat of charges and fines. People are getting run over without recourse. That's what this is. And this is the same as COVID. They said you are not allowed to travel on a plane or a train or a bus. And as soon as it got to court, they're like, oh, it's moot. That's over now. That's over. You can't say, we can't really revisit this in a court of law. So we don't have any real ability to hold our elected officials accountable at the ballot box or in the courts. And if we do somehow get it to the courts, well, I mean, you saw what happened with people who successfully beat their charges. The Crown wants to retry it. And sometimes they retry it and then they win because they have a sympathetic judge. So I think that that's pretty terrible. And we are having our laws weaponized against us. Back to the ostriches briefly. Pierre Poilievre has not said anything about the ostriches at all. Why do you think that is? I know what I think it is. I think that it's a uniparty. I think that the Liberals and the Conservatives work together to achieve goals they have in kind, and the Liberals will go about it one way and the Conservatives will go about it a different way, but they'll get to the same place at the end. That's why I think he hasn't said anything about the ostriches, because he can just let the Liberals continue to take the heat. He doesn't have to say anything, so he doesn't have to commit. He'll talk about Palestine or Gaza or Russia or Ukraine, right? He'll talk about Slava Ukraini, and then he won't have to say anything about the domestic issues that people are screaming about. He won't write a letter to anybody to save the ostriches. He won't bring it up to the prime minister. He won't do anything. Just like he hasn't really done anything yet. Right? How long has this government been in play? He ran an election. That's it. That's all he's done. Back-to-back elections. Good job. Dr. Leslyn Lewis is talking about, let's do our grab bag of governance. This is the Palestinian statehood revisited. And I wanted to understand how the Prime Minister of Canada can basically sign an executive order to allow Canada to recognize statehood. I didn't think it was legitimate, but it is. It is. And I'll explain it. Well, I'll read what ChatGPT told me. So take it with a grain of salt because it's AI, but I'll let you know what ChatGPT told me, because I said, I want to understand what happened here. And because there were people, and rightly so, it's good stuff. I like to understand where the minutia of it is interesting to me. So anyway, Dr. Leslyn Lewis, it won't be long before we get there. Dr. Leslyn Lewis is responding to herself, and she first says, last year, the Canadian Parliament voted 204 to 118 on a motion that explicitly stopped short of recognizing a Palestinian state. Yet the Carney Liberals ignored that democratic decision and unilaterally did it anyway. For that reason, I think it's invalid, because they ignored this the will of the people, very recent will of the people, and installed their own. And so that's frustrating. Dr. Leslie Lewis says Prime Minister Carney should not have reduced a significant decision like the recognition of the Palestinian state to an executive order. Parliament exists to give Canadians a voice in these defining moments. Decisions of this scale should not bypass Parliament. Canadians must be part of this conversation. And yeah, I think that's true. Here is, whoops, that's not what I wanted to show you. Hold on. Here is Mark Carney. He says, boots on the ground in Ukraine, boots on the ground in Gaza, except Canada has no boots. We can't recruit, we can't train, we can't even equip the troops we have. Carney is sending ghost soldiers to war. This is insanity. So yeah, I saw this yesterday and I find it interesting. Our military didn't have enough sleeping bags in 21, 22. I don't think it's got much better. Our recruitment's terrible. More people are leaving than are staying, I think, in the woke military. And we're in a situation where Mark Carney seems to be promising boots on the ground to help stabilize Gaza, invasion of Israel or something. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. But this is pretty wild. And I don't think we have the resources to do it. But I had one more thing on Gaza, and I can't. Oh, I guess this is boots on the ground in Gaza. I guess that's the other Gaza thing I had. Anyway, here's Mark Carney talking about supportive boots on the ground. We're going to go peacemake in Gaza or something like that, which again, not that I don't believe, but I don't think I believe.
The disarmament and elimination of Hamas as a force, certainly as a political force, military force first and political force, is one of the conditions for a sustained cessation of hostilities and peace. And when you say who is going to do that, there are many proposals, as I suspect you're aware, from a variety of Arab states, combination of Arab states and European states, to which Canada would be party if they were to come to pass, for multinational forces to be deployed in Palestine to enforce a peace and to drive that process forward.
There's a guy later who says basically, and he's talking about Russia and Ukraine, but basically the powers that be want to take over Ukraine and say, for peace, we're going to have a no-fly zone in Ukraine. And then if somebody violates that no-fly zone, you have NATO Article 4 triggered automatically, maybe even Article 5. Article 4 is a review. Article 5 is you are at war. You are actively at war. And so it's interesting because I think that this sounds an awful lot like that, right? And then how do you move to the next phase? And I feel like they do want to move to the next phase. Does that make sense? I said yesterday, it seems like Israel is using the movement of the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia to recognize Palestinian statehood. To recognize Palestinian statehood is a way for them to push off and move into a next phase. And one of the other things I wanted to show you is violent clashes broke out in Milan after Maloney refused to recognize a Palestinian statehood. So I feel like if Canada didn't recognize a Palestinian statehood, we would be seeing protests like what broke out in Milan, because it's a globalist push, because they want this situation. They want this because it's like sacrificing a smaller piece to get a bigger prize in a chess game. They want this situation to move forward to the next step of whatever plan they're rolling out. So as I said the other day, I don't know how yet, but I feel like this leads back to Trump, but Trump's discrediting himself anyway. So what are you going to do, right? This is the other thing I wanted to show you about Palestinian statehood. Here is, I asked, how does the Prime Minister of Canada have the use of executive orders? How did he recognize Palestine as a state without a vote? And basically it comes down to the prerogative powers of the executive. And those foreign policy matters like recognizing a state or revoking a state or ambassadorships or anything like that, that's vested in foreign policy matters. And that is down to the prerogative powers of the executive. So he gets to decide, and the cabinet, can decide whether Canada recognizes a state without passing legislation or holding a parliamentary vote. And Parliament can debate or pass motions expressing its position, but these are not legally binding. So even if Parliament comes back and passes we do not recognize Palestine, that would not override the executive order of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. In practice, the Prime Minister, through Global Affairs Canada, can announce recognition or non-recognition of another country as part of Canada's diplomatic stance. So, yep, and ChatGPT still thinks Trudeau is Prime Minister, so that's kind of funny. So what are you going to do there? But I find it interesting, and the only way to fix this is to replace the government. Do I think that's going to happen soon? Even if it does, and Poilievre becomes Prime Minister, we're just taking a different vehicle to the same location. Same place. Here's Maxime Bernier. He says, we need a peaceful revolution to save, it's a minute long. We need a peaceful revolution to save our country and restore our federation as it was conceived. We need structural reforms, not band-aid solutions like those proposed by these establishment political parties. We need committed, patriotic citizens who are ready to fight for what they believe in to start this revolution. We need to properly target the game we're playing to attack the appropriate enemy. If we don't do that, we will be doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Here's Max Bernier just talking about this. I think I read a lot of the quote, but we're going to listen to him anyway. Here we go.
As I said in the beginning of my speech, our federation is broken. The federal government keeps growing and does not respect the division of power in our Constitution. We are losing our basic rights and freedoms at a rapid pace. If this trend does not reverse, we can all say goodbye to our prosperity and our way of life. We need a peaceful revolution to save our country and restore our federation as it was conceived. We need structural reforms, not band-aid solutions like those proposed by these establishment political parties. We need committed, patriotic citizens who are ready to fight for what they believe in to start this revolution. I'm ready. Yes, I'm ready to fight for our country. Are you? Are you ready? Thank you.
It's a difficult prospect. I feel like we're fighting and participating in a rigged battle, and we're not allowed to acknowledge the rigging, and we're not allowed to acknowledge the cheating on the other side. We're not allowed to acknowledge any of it. And I don't know how you realistically fight that battle in good faith, because it's not a good faith battle. It's very interesting, very, very difficult. I've got to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. I'm looking at setting up, and I haven't finished setting it up yet. It's been real busy this week. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna offer a live stream for the full page show coming very, very soon. So keep watch for that, and I'm looking forward to offering that. So, but otherwise, people on the paid stream, you can head over to CanadaPoly.com to get the full show. Otherwise, we will catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, stick around. We'll finish off the show right meow. Okay, here is changes in British Columbia. John Rustad has ejected one of his top 3 BC caucus people. What's her name? Eleanor Sturko, and she's been rejected. And so she removes her belongings from BC Conservative Caucus after being ejected by John Rustad over what she says are false allegations she was organizing against him. So get out of the caucus. You're